There. Now you should be able to hear
Okay.
me.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to hear you or not. I was like, I know Jeff's talking, but I can't hear him.
I tried pulling that prank on my wife earlier. She had headphones in, so I was just moving my lips and to see if she could hear me. And so it fully came full circle and backfired on me tonight. So, as I was trying to say before I unmuted my mic, that is Chris Renkel at Local 12 in Cincinnati, a man that I am glad to say that I once upon a time worked with, and I'm not happy to say that I once upon a time lost a Bills-Browns bet to him.
That was a long time.
But tonight we are going to talk about the Josh Allen, Joe Burrow comparisons because Chris has got the cell phone ringing. What's up, buddy? You got breaking news there you got to go cover?
I don't think so. I think it's just someone give me a call. Sorry about that. Friday nights, they're busy this time of year. We got the Reds playing right now. Quarterbacks and rookies report for the Bengals tomorrow. And Wednesday, at least down here in Cincinnati, it all gets going with those Bengals. And they're all really excited because, as you said, the quarterbacks, of course, is Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow has been pretty exciting. And he's we didn't get to see enough of him last year. Let's put it that way.
All right, so we got to reminisce just a little bit because I worked with Chris at Local News 8 here in Idaho Falls from 2013 to 15, I believe it was, Chris, when you took off to cover the Crimson Tide down in Alabama.
Yeah, it was, I was thinking back about that when you asked me to come on, and I was like, wow, that was a while ago, man. That's 2013, fresh out of college, and the only phone call I got to go be a professional sportscaster was from you. And I saw the Idaho Falls ID come up on my phone, and I think my exact words, well, I can't say on air, is, oh, crap, here we go. So, hey, it ended up being pretty fun. We had a fun couple of years out there.
We did. And I got to tell you, I had to get used to this, but this is YouTube, so you can drop an F-bomb every once in a while and still be okay with the algorithms.
Hey, man, you can. I'm still under contract with somebody, so, I don't think they'd like it. I came out here saying all the things that we would say off the air.
All right. So we got 16 people watching right now. Go ahead, smash that like button, give us a share. Let's get some more people in here because, again, we are going to talk about Josh Allen versus Joe Burrow. There was an article today in The Athletic by Bruce Feldman. They're both working with Jordan Palmer and some of this science he does. But, Chris, before we get into that, I still have a few more questions since we haven't talked in so long. You're a Cleveland guy. Mm-hmm. And news dropped today about one of your Cleveland teams that they're no longer going to be the Indians. How do you feel about the Guardians?
I like it. It's different. You used to work in local sports. The same mascots get used over and over and over again. It's different. There aren't many Guardians out there. I know there's the XFL team. I don't know if the XFL is still a thing or not, but it's just different. It's something uniquely Cleveland with the statues and the bridge, which is pretty iconic. If you had to change it, I don't mind that. I don't mind it being a uniquely Cleveland thing. And hey, why not? It's different. At least they're trying. And honestly, it doesn't really change all that much. They changed the font a little bit, but the colors are the same. The uniforms are pretty much going to look the same. You just got the DIANS is the same as the other name. If they win, who cares? Call them whatever you want. Spend some money. Get the stars to stay there. Just win. I'll call them whatever they want me to call them.
Okay, so speaking of just winning, Bengals last year 2-7-1. Burrow goes out with a knee injury, but he's going to be back this year, and I think people really are looking forward to seeing if he can take that next step following the knee injury. We saw Josh Allen really struggle with the Bills in 2018. Now, the Bills roster that year was a hot garbage pile. He really had no pieces around him. And then he progressed, got him into the playoffs in 2019, to the AFC Championship game after even further progression in 2020. What are the expectations of Joe Burrow in the Cincinnati area this year?
Well, they're sky high. Like I said at the beginning, we didn't see enough of him to really get a feel for who he was. But what we saw was really good. And much like what you mentioned, Josh Allen, his first few years with any team that picks towards the top of the draft and is picking a new quarterback, you gotta you got to build around him. And those first couple of years are going to be rough. You're going to go through growing pains. That's just the way that the nature of what the NFL is. But this Bengals team, which is in basically a full rebuild, especially last year, he made them competitive. There were a few games. If he starts the whole season, doesn't get hurt, they probably win a few more games. And it's really going to depend on the cast around him. They've done a fairly good job of putting some Band-Aids on some positions, specifically that offensive line, where I think he has an advantage that a lot of other young quarterbacks don't have. He's got the weapons. Joe Mixon led the AFC in rushing a couple of years ago. He's been dinged up here and there, but you got a solid running back. You got some great receivers. Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins have both produced. There's a lot of hype around Jamar Chase. So he's got everything around him. It's going to come down to that offensive line. And from everything that I've heard of Joe's recovery, his knee is as close to 100% as it can be right now. He's going to likely start week 1. It's pretty miraculous because I wasn't sure what was. Oh, our news desk is calling me. That's okay. There's a basketball game they're supposed to be recording. That's all right though. I'll go do it again. Anyway, there's a lot of hype around Joe because we saw what he did with basically nothing, kept this Bengals team competitive, earned the respect, I think, of a lot of teams around the league. But, it's going to be very interesting a year or two, his sophomore year. I'm intrigued because I don't know how high this Bengals team or how good they can be. It's going to depend on that offensive line, and it's going to depend on Joe Burrow.
Well, as a Cleveland guy and a Browns fan, we'll talk very quietly about that so they don't hear me in Cincinnati. You're probably hoping for another team to take the top spot, although you probably wouldn't mind if the Bengals could do that as well. Part of that article by Bruce Feldman was how Josh Allen, Joe Burrow are working with Jordan Palmer. Jordan Palmer is using this motion capture. He's using force metrics and what they're doing. And one of the things that really stood out to me was coming out of college, Joe Burrow, his exit velocity was 48.5. Now, they didn't give a Josh Allen college exit velo, but Josh Allen right now is being measured at about 53 on the exit velo miles per hour. Post ACL workout or ACL injury and now working out, Burrow is at 54 miles an hour. People thought Josh Allen had a cannon, a howitzer. Joe Burrow's going to be right up there with him because he's going to be able to get a little bit more force, and that's a lot of what the article was writing about. So what are you hearing out of Bengals camps with Joe Burrow and how he's progressing?
I think the miraculous thing is when he went down, which almost – I've said this to in a couple other segments we've done. It was almost a foregone conclusion with how that offensive line was. We were like, it's not a matter of if he gets hurt, it's a matter of when. Like they had injuries. Jonah Williams goes out. So many other guys go down. They were basically signing guys off the street, guys who had never practiced, never played with the team, and saying, hey, great, it's Saturday. You got to play Sunday now. It was just such a patchwork offensive line. And they were going up against really good defenses. So it was a matter of time before he got hurt. Now, we interviewed a good sports doctor locally, and I asked him, I said, what is the timetable? 20 years ago, you get this kind of injury and your career's probably over. Thankfully, with the advances in science, the doctor told me right then and there, he's like, give him some time. Surgery goes well, it'll be fine. He'll go back out there. He'll be 100%. He'll be back to where he was. You just got to give it time to heal. The surgery has to go well. And sure enough, when it came to OTAs, which they had 100%, reporting back for OTAs, when he went down, and I heard the doctor say, hey, he can start next year if it all goes well. I was thinking, okay, first couple weeks of training camp, he's not going to be out there. It's going to be light. And then maybe the last week or two, he's going to, rush it in, and they're going to be like, all right, he's 98%. Let's throw him out there. OTA started. Everyone shows up, including Joe. And not only is Joe throwing, he's running the offense. He looks like he's back to 100%. So I think that's really impressive when you talk about a guy who had his knee pretty much shattered being back to as close to 100%. And it seems like, at least from what I can tell, it is all, full steam ahead. He's going to start week 1 when they play the Vikings.
So as a Bills fan, we have quite a bit of bias in toward our guy, Josh Allen. And what I really want to get you,
everyone does.
yeah, what I is as a Browns fan who's covering the Bengals, you have Baker Mayfield, you got Joe Burrow, you got to deal with Ben Roethlisberger and Lamar Jackson twice this season. Cincinnati's, close to Indianapolis. It's in the pretty much center of the country. What are you seeing the quarterbacks around you, and what do you see out of Josh Allen, and what sets him apart?
He is, the arm strength is what we've known since he was at Wyoming. He can throw it a country mile. I think the real improvement that we've seen is his accuracy. It went from, all right, Josh Allen, at least from the outside looking in, I'll be honest, I haven't watched many Bills games unless they've been playing the Bengals, but it went from just the guy like, all right, he's going to make a few big throws, deep threat, whatever, to now he's more of a complete player. And he's got a lot of that mobility, I think, is really what separates him, because he's almost a Cam Newton-like, where he's got that rocket arm, probably a little better passer than Cam was in his heyday, but he's also got that mobility and that ability to stretch the field when the defense all steps back. He goes all the way around and picks up first downs and all that kind of stuff. So it's really impressive, because think about that quarterback class in the draft. Lamar, Baker, Josh, Darnold, we'll see what he's got in Carolina, but that was one loaded quarterback class. And the fact that you could split hairs, and if you go back and try to redraft and you're going, all right, Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, which one do we want? I don't think there's a wrong answer there. And I don't think there's a wrong answer with Baker Mayfield either. It's just remarkable how these young quarterbacks are starting to take over. And it's fun to see, honestly.
So you've said that it's all dependent on the offensive line, and that's really what we saw in Buffalo in 2018. The offensive line, I don't even want to bring up bad memories of the names. It was garbage. They go out, they sign a bunch of guys in 2019. Are the pieces going to be there for Joe Burrow to make that jump? Because Josh Allen went from just completion percentage and his rating. He went from 52.8 in his first year to 58.8 to 69.2. That's almost an 11 full points in jump in his second and third year. But a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, Stephon Diggs made Josh Allen. Well, those people are freaking stupid. But are the pieces going to be there for the Bengals for Joe Burrow to make that jump like Josh Allen has?
That's $1 million question. They've brought in some guys. They got some young guys. They drafted heavy, even though everyone points to the number 5 pick and they went wide receiver. After that, they drafted heavy in the offensive line. They brought in a new offensive line coach. They got rid of some of the guys that numerous ones that probably shouldn't have been out there, but out of necessity, you needed depth. You got a lot of injuries. You had to do that. I don't know if this is going to be, let's compare it to the best offensive lines out there. You know how Kansas City had a bad one? They completely remade it, brought in some big names, spent a lot of money. Cleveland did the same thing a couple years ago and saw the dividends out of that. Is it going to be that good? I don't think so. Is it going to be good enough for them to be more competitive? I think it will be. And I think this is going to be a big year for the Bengals offensive linemen that are there. A guy like Jonah Williams, who's your franchise left tackle, you took him first round of the draft a couple years ago out of Alabama. He needs to prove, is he the guy? Is he the answer at left tackle? Or when the draft comes up again, I don't think that this franchise, they did it with Carson Palmer too. I was watching rewatching an old Hard Knocks from 2009 when the Bengals were on it, just to, get in the football spirit of things with training camp opening up. And, they were talking about, this offensive line, it got Carson Palmer hurt last year. They need to address that. And it's like, well, history repeats itself. If the left tackle position isn't where you need it to be, Jonah's a good guy. I love covering him at Alabama. He's a good guy in the Bengals locker room, but you can't have a liability there because Burrow is your franchise. You got a guy who can lead you to the promised land. You got to give him the supporting cast. He's got the weapons. He needs the protection.
How's the fans' view of Joe Burrow? Because I think for Buffalo, it didn't take very long. It took him jumping over Anthony Barr in Minnesota his first season to go, oh yeah, this is our guy. This is gonna be good. And then 2019, he got us into the playoffs again. the franchise's second time in 3 years after that long playoff drought. Are Cincinnati fans going, he's our guy? Have they adopted him?
The second that he was drafted, he was their guy. I think he really won everybody over. And this is no disrespect to Andy Dalton, who still has a ton of fans here in the city. Andy did amazing things on the field, off the field. People love the red rifle. But that LSU run that Joe Burrow had, and just the swagger that, the pointing to the ring finger during the championship game, like, give me my ring, the really awesome shot of him smoking a cigar in the locker room afterwards, people just gravitated to that. And I think that's why, other players do that too. They gravitate to Joe. From the minute that he walked into the building at Paul Brown Stadium, we had Zach Taylor, the head coach, said, he's our starting quarterback. And we asked, the running backs, the receivers, does Joe look? They're like, Joe's going to be an amazing quarterback. You can just see it. He's got that personality. He's got that moxie. And I think you have to have that, especially if you're a great quarterback. I see a lot of the same things from what I hear with Josh Allen. Guys love playing with him. Guys gravitate to him. The same with the Baker Mayfield. Guys just gravitate to him. The same with the Tom Brady. I mean, how many guys did Tampa get in the last year because they're like, I want to go play with Tom Brady? I mean, that's the way, love him or hate him, you got to have that moxie if you're going to be a good starting quarterback.
Yeah, we just lost a bunch of viewers because you brought up he who shall not be named because of that.
Hey, he's a kid, all right. It's okay.
Yeah, there's still a lot of scars that need to be healed for about 20 years. Yeah. I was I had one, but you had to bring up Tom Brady, and it just went straight out the window because, yeah, a lot of our fans are a little bit bitter about what happened to us. Basically, Tom Brady to Bills fans is Ben Roethlisberger to Browns fans. If you're a Browns fan, you can.
Ben Roethlisberger to the entire state of Ohio, minus Findlay, Ohio, where he's from, which is a very, very small corner up in the top of the state.
Does Miami of Ohio like him?
I'm sure they do in Oxford. I don't go to Oxford much, but I'm sure they do. I mean,
okay,
they got enough big names, though. They don't have to love him, If he's the only big one coming out of your school, you got to love the guy no matter what. They don't have to. I mean, that guy Paul Brown went there, Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechler, Sean McVay. They got enough big names.
Yeah. Okay. So the Lone Wolf always coming in with fire comments. He says, "Don't hate the GOAT." And if you got a comment, go ahead and get it up there. Remember, super chats get priority for sure. Lone Wolf. You know what? I respect him, but I got enough battle scars that I just don't want to have to deal with it. And if I ever heard Josh Allen just use Giselle as an audible or a signal, I would just laugh my ass off and just think that would be fantastic. So if you could go over the four quarterbacks in the AFC North, you're obviously dealing with the Burrow talk on a daily basis. You're a Browns fan, so you're rooting for Baker Mayfield. Then you got Lamar Jackson, Ben Roethlisberger, who Adam Schefter said Ben Roethlisberger looked lean. If Ben Roethlisberger looked lean,
I saw that.
I am also lean. Like I'm not lean. Like, I kind of hide it, right below the picture, but I'm not lean.
You and me both, man. That's all that beer we drink. That's okay.
Well, yeah, you got that chili too down in Cincinnati.
I met some people from out of town last night, and they were talking down about our Skyline chili. You can't do that. Skyline's amazing.
It's like talking down about our wings.
Exactly. Everyone loves buffalo wings, but the quarterbacks is the point you were trying to get to. Quarterbacks in the AFC North are 3 ascending stars and one guy on his way out who's going to end up in the Hall of Fame, so you can't really say too much. Like, it's like eventually any great player, you're never going to bench him. You can't bench Ben Roethlisberger even if he's not quite up there, because at this point you're thanking him for all those years that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, for the Super Bowls, for all those runs. And it's kind of a weird position to put the Steelers in because they're such a well-run organization that unfortunately, hey, if Josh Allen has a Hall of Fame career, there's going to be a point where the Bills are going to be in a similar situation. You don't want to lose Josh, but you can't bench him because everything he's done for you, you're paying the price on the back end for what he did on the front end.
I'll tell you as a Bills fan what you just brought up, because it's been since 1996 that we've been in that situation, and we're not there yet. So it's still been 25 years. We're staring down the barrel of close to being there. Now I know you personally dislike Roethlisberger as much as you used to dislike LeBron. I don't know if you still like LeBron. We haven't really had that conversation since he left.
It's okay. 2016 made up for it. We're good.
20.
It's not my favorite. We're good.
But if you had to rank the quarterbacks based on their seasons they're going to have this year, where would you project the four of them, and then insert? So do the four in the North, and then insert Josh into where you think he would be.
It's a really good question. Because it's a tough question, because with the Ravens and the Bengals, to me, it's hard to tell. I need to see more out of Lamar Jackson. Amazing athlete, amazing quarterback, all that. I think NFL defenses are starting to get enough tape on him that they're starting to figure out what he can and can't do. That being said, doesn't mean that he can't evolve his game and play better. And then the Bengals, it's all going to depend on the offensive line. Is Joe Mixon fully healthy? I'm going to say the safe pick is I'll go 1A, and you can say whichever one you want between Baker and Josh Allen having equal split hairs. One goes one way, one goes. Anyway, they're probably the ones that I would say would be the top. I'll go Lamar Jackson 2, just because he's got the MVP and he's always going to have the crazy highlights. Slightly behind Lamar, I'll put Joe Burrow. Just because there's just too many questions on their offensive line. And Roethlisberger, he's last, but he's still probably better than a lot of other quarterbacks in the NFL. It's just you're talking against some of the premier young talent at the position you're putting them up against.
Yeah, it's going to be really rough. Lone Wolf coming in with a question, and the question is, how would you compare Herbert to Burrow? And I think this is an age-old question because, I think a lot of fans started to gravitate toward what Justin Herbert was doing at the end of the year. Even when he first came in and was giving Patrick Mahomes a run for his money, it's just like, okay, whatever. What do you see between the two?
That's a really, really good question. And it's such an interesting dichotomy to this, because these two franchises drafted franchise star caliber young quarterbacks, at least their rookie years. But every decision they've kind of made since then has been different. Where the Chargers heavily invested draft picks, free agent signings. They spent a lot of money on their offensive line. The Bengals spent money, draft picks on, receivers, on everything else surrounding, saying we have the guys in place we want. Our offensive line will be good enough. I'd probably put Joe ahead of Herbert just a little bit talent-wise, because I think he's done more with less. But Herbert's situation might be better based on that offensive line and where their defense is at. So that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch going forward. Not only how the franchises have handled each quarterback and they're going into their second years, but just, both guys can flat out sling the football. And I'm really interested. Mm-hmm. Is that going to be a Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning kind of debate years down the line? Like, well, if you had to go back, would you take one over the other?
Would you?
To be determined. I don't know.
I had to throw that out there, see if I could get you on the spot. Now, we've talked a lot about Burrow because you're there in Cincinnati covering the Bengals, but you're a Browns fan. We've mentioned that as well, and I'll whisper it so the people in Cincinnati, don't get too caught on to your actual fandom. Baker Mayfield, number 1 overall, struggled his first 2 years, 6-7, and then 6-10, and then all of a sudden something clicked. What clicked for him last year, and what do you see him doing this year? Can he carry it on?
What clicked was Kevin Stefanski. I was
Yeah,
at
very true.
the last game of the Freddie Kitchen era because it was in Cincinnati, and my parents came down, so we were sitting. They had tickets right behind, 3 rows back at the bench, and I had a quarter and a half. I could go sit with them and watch, and it was just dysfunction on that sideline. It was like watching a high school football game almost. Like, guys were trying to figure things out as they went. It just seemed like there was no cohesiveness, and that all went away. And I think that was very telling of, the first year for Baker with the Browns was pretty good. He was a pretty good rookie quarterback. Had his flaws, but every rookie does. That second year was a train wreck, and that third year was really good. So I think while everyone points to the bad season that he had, the anomaly to me is that, that one bad season being the anomaly. I don't think the good was the anomaly. So I'm intrigued to see how he goes into this next year, because they have the talent up front. They have the talent in the receiving core. The head coach seems to have his stuff together, which is something we don't see every year from rookie head coaches.
Yep.
I'm very intrigued to see where that goes, because it's easy to do it for 1 or 2 years. In any sport, you can be a 1-year wonder. You can do something well for 1 year. The key is doing it well for a longer period of time, because now, especially professional sports, these NFL defensive coordinators are the best at what they do. Their entire jobs in the offseason and leading up into the season and beyond is watch the tape and figure out how to stop you. If you don't evolve and continue to progress, that's where you get run out of the league, and you get run out pretty quickly. So I think I'm very intrigued to see how this goes.
And I think I think there's a nice feeling coming from the national media for the Browns this year. And some people might even pick the Browns above the Bills to challenge Kansas City a little bit more for that AFC championship. But do you realize how much the NFL needs a Bills-Browns AFC championship game? We were this close last year. I mean,
do you know how much the liquor industry needs a Bills versus Browns AFC championship game?
Yeah, Lake Erie would be about 10% alcohol by volume after that game.
Yeah, you're not lying on that one. You might not be far off. I mean, a lot of people love the underdog story. I think that the Browns are the lovable underdog at the moment, that haven't been there, haven't done it in a really, really long time, since most of us have been alive. It'll be interesting. As someone who's grown up in Cleveland, I will tell you, you don't expect it until it happens, because once you start expecting it, it doesn't happen. So that's the interesting thing.
Has there been any news out of Cincinnati? I know we're kind of coming out of the dead period, heading toward camp. So what are you looking forward to as rookies get coming in, as Burrow gets back on the field? That's the big story, I think. But what else is there in Cincinnati that those fans should have to look forward to?
I think this year's a complete turning of the page. Last year and the last couple of years since head coach Zach Taylor got here, you had a lot of the holdovers from the Marvin Lewis era, a lot of the fan favorites, the Geno Atkins, A.J. Green, Gio Bernard, a lot of those guys who had been on those playoff run teams. And they went with the rebuild, but they kept a lot of those guys. So I think there was a little bit of a hangover there. There's a couple, I don't want to say malcontent, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but guys who maybe weren't entirely on board with the rebuild and just wanted to reload and go. This is almost an entirely new team. There's new guys. It's a new buy-in. I think we're going to learn a lot about Zach Taylor. I really like Zach Taylor as a person. I want to see what he's all about as a head coach. And I think for the first time since he's been in Cincinnati, he has the pieces there to actually do it. He was a rebuilding coach, much like what a Hugh Jackson was in Cleveland. A lot of some coaches become the fall guys for a rebuild, and they're not there when the rebuild actually, takes place. He's gotten through it. I'm really intrigued to see what he can do with what he has. So, the Jamar Chase of it all is going to be interesting. Can he be that? Can they rebuild that LSU offense that was amazing and record-setting in college during their national championship? I'm intrigued to see that. I want to see Joe's leg. Is he going to be, it's easy to say before the bullets fly at you, oh yeah, I'm back to 100%, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
The last time you were on the field, you had a defensive end crashing into your knee the wrong way and had to be carted off. And, is there going to be a little bit of the yips there? Is he going to take a little, have some time to get back to where he was mentally? That's going to be really interesting. And mainly, all eyes are going to be on this offensive line. Can they block? Can they be good enough? Because if they're good enough, again, the weapons are there. They could be I'm not saying the Bengals are going to be a dark horse in the AFC, but I think they could spoil a lot of games that they're supposed to lose and maybe ruin a couple seasons along the way.
And speaking about games they're supposed to lose, I think there's a battle that the front office and management in Buffalo is starting to lose. And that's management 0, Cole Beasley 1. And if you haven't been following what's been going on, Cole Beasley has been very, very vocal with his anti-COVID-19 vaccination and the league policies. What's the feeling been in Cincinnati? Are they one of the teams that has been up to 75% yet? Or do you have any outspoken guys that might be on Cole Beasley's side?
To my knowledge, I don't think we have a lot of guys who are anti anything right now. I don't know what the vaccination rate is. I think it's up there because what the Bengals did was basically Zach Taylor made a deal with the team of if we get our vaccination point to a certain point and we have 100% buy-in in all the OTAs, we'll do a one-day mini camp. So that's what they did. They had a one-day mini camp, sent everybody home. So we assume they're up there. I don't think anyone's come out with the exact numbers on it. I don't think any team officially has said, well, this is where we're at. And haven't honestly seen a lot of guys speak out any which way with the NFL's new policy, which I think will be very interesting going forward. I know the media met with the Bengals a couple days ago of our own policies that we have to follow for training camp. And I will tell you that the majority of the league is still taking this virus incredibly seriously. And there are a lot of policies in place to make sure everyone gets through it healthy. And much like last year, we can have a season and not have any hiccups. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
It's really going to be interesting, and giving out personal opinions on Twitter can always backfire. So, I can understand where, yes, Cole Beasley is standing up for the people who may not be able to speak about it. And then I also understand players who want to do the right thing for what they think is for the team, what they think is the right thing for the team. I certainly understand both sides for it. And it's a great debate, and it shows where we are in our country right now as far as just being able to voice opinions and not get jumped on from either side.
Stay off Twitter if you want that.
What's that?
Stay off Twitter if you want that.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know if I ever told you this, but one time, and for the viewers at home, I don't know if you can actually tell because the proportion on his screen is actually pretty good. But Chris Renkel has a massive head. And
where are you going with this, Jeff?
He saved my butt one day, and sorry, they're two different completely thoughts, but I had to throw that out there. Chris Renkel has a massive head, but he's actually I'm very tall and lanky, and Chris is not tall and lanky. But I could one day at Local News 8, I had forgotten to take a jacket to work with me. And you had left one there after the weekend shift, and I was barely able to squeeze into it after I had realized it was like 5:56, and I was on at 6, and I realized I didn't have a jacket. No time to go home and get one. Absolutely not. And I looked like David Spade and Tommy Boy with how.
There's a funnier story there. You weren't there, but our old editor, also named Jeff, one of our more slender male reporters had left the jacket, and he did the Tommy Boy because Jeff, much like you, Jeff, and me, is not a slender person, and did the whole what's happening. But hey, that's the beauty of being on a team player and not hiring somebody who's a tiny person. You could borrow my jackets anytime, Jeff.
Yeah, are you talking about Mr. Berg? Is that?
No, it wasn't Berg. No.
Oh, okay. Because we had a reporter in local News 8 that I swear he could have shopped at Oshkosh Bagosh with his
No, you're
frame.
not
So,
wrong. You're not wrong.
um, so Lone Wolf coming in on our previous vaccine talk. I've used social media like the plague. Stay far away from it. Kind of hard when you're in this industry to stay away from social media. You got to be plugged in
Yeah, don't really have a
all
choice.
the time. How many hours do you spend scrolling on Twitter, following an IG, following these guys?
Too much. Way too much time. I try to unplug when I'm away from work, but that lasts about 10 minutes. I put on something on TV and it's just like, all right, we're back to scrolling. We're back to seeing. I don't know. Probably should look into that. That's probably not healthy, but you know.
Yeah, go into your phone analytics. There's the analytics word again.
I don't know if I should. I don't want to know. I'm blissfully ignorant on that right now. Let's keep it that way.
All right, get your questions into the comment section. We got a few more minutes left with Chris Renkel out of Local 12 in Cincinnati covering the Bengals. We were talking about the Allen and Burrow comparisons that came out in The Athletic today, an article by Bruce Feldman. And if you weren't here at the top of the show with us, one of the things that really caught my eye in this article was the human eye. And you're familiar with frames per second, Chris, having to work with a camera all the time. Human eye can catch about 30 to 40 frames per second. The motion capture technology that Jordan Palmer is using with Josh Allen and Joe Burrow in Southern California, can you guess how many frames per second this will catch?
I'm probably going to guess 600.
Not that high. It's 240. So you're not quite 10 times. But 240, that's quite a bit more than the human eye can see. So they can get much finer in the detail of a QB's motion and what they're doing wrong. And we talked about the force. Burrow's exit velocity pre-draft, and this is just the exit velocity. This is not max velocity. 48.5 pre-draft. This spring, post-ACL surgery, 54 miles an hour. And Josh Allen's been clocked at 53. So when you go back out to training camp this fall, Chris, look at that exit velo.
I'll bring my radar gun and I'll stand and I'll say like, all right, Joe, how fast are we going here? No, it's remarkable how the technology has changed, and interesting how a lot of these teams and teams that are having success, not just in football, but baseball, basketball, that they're employing these technologies to be able to test and seeing how to improve. And it's really something to behold, because I know, having covered Alabama, Auburn, and the SEC, a lot of those schools as well with much bigger, a lot more money to spend because, they get the boosters and all that, all the technology they're using even at the college level to be able to, do what they need to do and get better. I mean, I remember playing high school football, and even when we were out in Idaho, some of these high schools barely have a camera to put up top to be able to tape the plays that go over the next week. And there are even high schools around here that have live in-game breakdowns of, coaches they're in the video tent and going, hey, all right, yeah, see how they're stunting on this side? I need you to shift your gun. I'm like, when did this all of a sudden change? When did the technology become so much that high schools are able to do this kind of stuff now?
Well, what is his name? Brian Urlacher. And we'll get to Lone Wolf's question in a second. I'm going to leave it up there so that I remember. Brian Urlacher, former Bears linebacker, married. Do you remember?
I remember.
Frost. Yes, yeah. Chris Frost is the basketball coach at Highland High School, where Taysom Hill went to. For all of those that don't know and have not heard me talk about Highland High School, because I've talked about it quite a bit.
As did Dirk Cutter, former NFL coach, and Merrill Hodge as well.
Marvin Lewis. Well, he did not he went to Idaho State, which is right there in Pocatello.
Go to Highland.
But anyway, so Brian Urlacher bought Century High School, where his brother-in-law, Ryan Frost, is now the head basketball coach. They just randomly showed up. And I'm going to assume that it was Brian Urlacher that bought this for him, because Century showed up to Idaho Falls High School with this NFL technology on the sideline. And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure we know where the fundraising for that came with. But
nice.
So just to add on to your point there, but Lone Wolf coming in, what's your realistic expectations for the Bengals record-wise? And then Ray Shko, if I can read that right, it's kind of small. Ray Shoko says 8-8. Chris, and he says 8-9. Sorry, I had to check that one as well.
Eight,
yeah, we're still going to have to get used to that. It doesn't sound right. It does not sound right.
We should have a jar in our sports office to how many times we're going to say the wrong final prediction on scores because of the new game. But anyway, to answer the question, I'm looking at their schedule right now. I say best case scenario 9 wins. If everything goes right, I think 9 wins. The problem that they have and they can't avoid right now is the AFC North is, if not the toughest division, slightly under the toughest division in football. And if the Pittsburgh Steelers are the worst team, that's a bad thing because the Steelers could have a terrible team and will still find a way to at least go, I guess, not 500 anymore, but a game over 500. They're just that. I don't like them, but they're just a really, really well-run organization. That's the problem that the Bengals have. If everything goes right, you're still going against 2 potential Super Bowl contenders in the Ravens and Browns, and then the Steelers, who are the Steelers. So I'd say 9 wins is probably best case scenario. Realistically, 6 to 7 wins. And I think 6 to 7 wins is a really major step forward for this franchise and for this team. And I think they're a couple years away, maybe a year or 2 away from really getting back up to that top half. They got the flashy pieces. They're young. It's just going to come down again to that offensive line and that defense. They didn't really talk about this much, but they don't get after the quarterback at all. They lost Carl Lawson. They signed Trey Hendrickson to try and get after the quarterback a little more, or at least take that up. That's going to be another emphasis. They need to get after the quarterback because there are some great quarterbacks they're going to have to go up against this year. But yeah, I'd say 7 to 9 wins, 6, 7 wins, probably realistic.
All righty, that is Mr. Chris Renkel, local 12 in Cincinnati, covering the Bengals, waiting for the Reds game to end. Former colleague right here at Local News 8 in Idaho Falls, where he got his start. Chris, you're not too far. Ball State's not too far from you there, is it?
About 2 hours.
Your alma mater.
Yeah. Haven't made it up there yet, but about 2 hours. Trying to figure out if I can go to a game this year.
Well, let's hope you can. So all of those of us who can't get to those types of games that we want to, I'd like to go to a Bonnie's basketball game here soon. One more comment. I feel like Burrow comps to someone like Stafford or Baker instead of Josh Allen. Would you agree with that a little bit more?
That's a really interesting point. I don't know enough about Matthew Stafford yet. I don't think we do yet. I mean, we know who he is. He's been in the league for a long time, but those Lions teams weren't very good. I'm of all the storylines in the NFL, I'm really interested to see how Stafford does now with a Rams team that's good, has some weapons, good coaches, a little bit of continuity. So that's a really interesting point. I think if he ends up we're WKRC, Lone Wolf, not WKRP, and I know that turkeys cannot fly. Back to the Stafford thing, though. If Joe Burrow ends up as a Matthew Stafford, I think that's a bad thing for the Bengals because it means that he's been plagued by a lot of continuity issues and hasn't been able to take that next step. But hey, if you draft a Matthew Stafford, there's a lot of teams in the league that would want a Matthew Stafford for 10 years. So that's an interesting comparison.
All right, that has been Chris Renkel. We'll let him get out of here. Chris, thanks for your time. It's great to hear your voice again. I would say the same thing about your face, but we know how we feel about that.
Great.
And have fun covering the Bengals this season because a lot of people would kill for that job.
Hey, nothing like it. Getting paid to talk about football all day. I'll take it.
All right, can you give me a Go Bills?
Go Bills. Hey, I like the Bills.
Hey,
like
all right.
They're fun.
I didn't know if he would.
Would love to party with the Mafia someday.
Oh, the parties with the Mafia are awesome. I didn't know if you would give that to me because of our bets that I continuously lost. I actually had to go on TV wearing a Browns jersey
and then Giants
back in 2000.
Julia Cox after I left. You lost a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah, because those were lean years. The 2012s through the 2014s were not very fun, and then you get into Rex Ryan. So Chris Renkel, go check in on the Red score. Thanks for joining us, and everybody else, have a good night. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, and go Bills.